Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Richard, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be back at Politics in the Pub and see lots of very familiar faces who I haven't seen for a little while. We've come down from the Blue Mountains today, and so I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to share with you some of the images and stories from Fallujah. The concept, the subtitle of People's History isn't just a phrase we thought sounded nice. People's histories are an important, significant contribution now to historical accounts. So there are many examples of people's histories, particularly it's more of a thing in the US, but there's something very important about memory and how events are remembered. The attacks on the city of Fallujah have been remembered in a particular way by those in power. They have been celebrated. Those who participated are considered heroes. They are making Hollywood movies, such as American Sniper, about the attacks. So, and most of the books that have been written about Fallujah, because they're a genre of books about Fallujah, have been written by soldiers, former soldiers, generals, embedded journalists, corporate journalists, or military historians. So we are having the attacks on Fallujah remembered in this way, in a very triumphalistic way, and how it was a great success and the battles are celebrated. On the other hand, most of those books failed to interview not even one Iraqi person, including Jim Molan's book. So our goal was to use this genre of people's histories to tell the other side of the story and to challenge the memory, that dominant paradigm that's been established, to challenge that and to revise that. And so our book chooses to bring forward the voices of ordinary Iraqis, as well as Iraqi journalists, Iraqi human rights watch people, etc., but also just ordinary people. And so in my time this evening, I'm just going to share some of those voices with you in keeping with that spirit of a people's history. So I'm just going to lean down to you. So for those who aren't aware, Baghdad, Fallujah is about an hour and a half, depending how fast you drive. Ramadi is also important, although I would put Ramadi more here. This is Jordan, and that's the highway, goes to Baghdad through Ramadi and Fallujah. And just remember that for a point that I'll be making later. So it's a significant spot along that major thoroughfare. So what we are arguing in this book is that the attacks on Fallujah result in what we're using the term herbicide, the killing of a city. So it's quite a serious claim, and we back it up with about 25 pages of references and accounts and evidence. So the killing of the city. So there's not many cities that we could compare historically with what happened in Fallujah. There have been cities that have been obliterated as a result of warfare, particularly aerial bombing, but many of those cities have been able to rebuild. The issue with Fallujah is the following points. Not only was there physical damage and destruction caused by the bombardments and missiles and bombings, but the nature and intensity of those attacks resulted in what we claim is a case of ecocide. So what happened in Fallujah is the city was surrounded, so it wouldn't even be completely true to call the attacks on Fallujah battles or attacks. They're more like sieges, so we call them sieges. The city was encircled, nobody was let in or out, And then kaboom, the place was destroyed using conventional weapons, but also weapons that we would argue contain both depleted uranium and enriched uranium. And they were experimenting with all sorts of other weapons, such as thermobaric weapons as well. So in this situation where you've got this city under siege and whoever was left in there is having to cope with the toxic pollution from the intense use of these weapons, and the results I'll come to later. So we're claiming the case of ecocide. Sociocide's a very interesting concept, I think. So the killing or the destruction of an entire way of life. And that is what we are claiming occurred in Fallujah as well. So an example, after the second attack in 2004, again the city was surrounded by checkpoints. You could not leave Fallujah unless you went through multiple checkpoints and your retina of your eye was scanned. So I would equate it maybe only with Gaza as being an open-air prison. So ordinary things of life could no longer occur for those residents, like going to school, going to university, having a job in another city, getting an education, getting married, going to a funeral, all of these things. Ordinary life was completely transformed, and the ordinary things of life and cultural things, religious practices, etc., were unable to be practiced. And there are many other examples that we could give, but a case of sociocide, nothing was the same again. So as a result of all of these factors, the only city that I could compare Fallujah to, I did my master's dissertation, this topic, was Carthage. Rome's sacking of Carthage in antiquity. I had to go back that far to find a city whose destruction had been so complete to compare it with Fallujah. Of course, we know with the legends associated with the sacking of Carthage is that salt was strewn on the ground and toxic herbs, so that the cycle of life was destroyed in Carthage, and so that cycle of life was not able to continue. So we are arguing that's what's happened here in Fallujah. So these are three academic concepts that we're arguing. We've put forward with very serious arguments and evidence, etc., etc. Sorry about this microphone, it's just cutting in and out. I'm not sure what's going on. So in April 2004, I was living in Baghdad at the time. I was doing different aid work, human rights work, solidarity work with the Iraqi people, and the attack on Fallujah had begun, and it was into its fourth or fifth day, and we got calls, we being some independent foreigners living in Baghdad, we got a call from some Iraqi doctors in Fallujah, and they said, well, you want to be human rights observers, human shields, whatever, you need to come to Fallujah, they're killing our children. And we said to the doctor, well, okay, calm down, don't exaggerate, it's, you know, we'll see what we can do. We thought he was being very dramatic to say that, and he said, well, come as soon as you can. There was a kind of a ceasefire the next day. We hitched a ride with an aid convoy and talked our way into Fallujah. So I was one of only 5 foreign eyewitnesses to what I call the massacre of Fallujah in April 2004. So these are just a few pictures of what I saw there. I'll flick through some of them quickly, others I might tell a little story, but if something catches your eye you could ask me about it later. So I don't know if you can see the bullet holes on the back of this ambulance. There was not one ambulance in Fallujah that had not been riddled with bullets. The doctors were the heroes of the day in Fallujah. The operation in Fallujah from the US forces, their tactics was to place snipers on the rooftops of mosques, buildings, anything high, and to shoot anything that moved. That was the orders. And so that's exactly what they did. Fallujah City Hospital had been closed, it had been shut down by US military country because the doctors were reporting the casualties and journalists were hearing about the numbers of casualties. So the US forces saw that as propaganda, so they closed it down so only soldiers could be treated there, so no Iraqi citizen could be treated in the hospital. So then the doctors set up these clinics, makeshift clinics, in doctor surgeries and just back rooms wherever they could. And they had it in power. In one point they kept the blood in a Coke machine, they had no anaesthetic. They were doing surgeries by cigarette light or candles or torches. And this little boy was brought in when I was there. You can see bandage to the head. He had gone to the head and he's gone. He didn't have a chance. This is a woman you can see with a sniper shot to the head, a little girl. The doctors were not exaggerating at all. If I had not seen it with my own eyes, I don't know that I would have believed it, but there were a dozen little bodies of children just at my feet on the footpath on this particular afternoon. And they kept coming and coming and coming. These were some friends who I went in there with. We were actually a good representation of the coalition of the willing from England, America, England and Australia. And so the doctor said to us, well, we need to deliver some first aid to some equipment to this other side of the city being closed off by US forces. They're going to shoot at us and shoot at our ambulance. Maybe if you go, they won't shoot at you. The idea of accompaniment being foreign. We thought it's the least we could do, and so we gave it a try. We put on these medical smocks and we were in the back of an ambulance and they took us to the no man's land where there was a barrack and the Iraqi forces at this side, the US forces were controlling the other side. And we got out of the ambulance, we had a megaphone and we put our hands in the air and we put our passports in our hands. We thought that would be our protection, and we couldn't see any snipers, but we knew that they were there. We stepped out onto the road and used the megaphone to call out and say, American soldiers, please pay attention. We wanting to cross to the other side to deliver aid to some people who need it. And please indicate where we can cross safely, and knowing that we had a right to do so. There's no answer that we could hear, so we stepped forward and continued to walk and continued to call out with this greeting and asking would we be able to cross. And suddenly I heard the noise before I felt it, but then I felt two bullets shave the top of my head. Now, they weren't aiming to kill us, they could have, but certainly that was not a very nice thing to happen. We had to fall down onto the ground and crawl away off the road. I cut my hand, I still have a scar on my finger from that day, and we went back to the ambulance. And I don't know if we were more angry than afraid. Like we were really, really angry, and so we went back on the road. This time we knew where they were, and we were facing them. We could see them at the end of the road with some sandbags. We put our hands in the air again and said, American soldiers, please give us permission or indicate where we can cross the road. And this time there was no hesitation at all. Within a second there were two more bullets shaving the top of our head. And so we had to abandon that mission, and we were devastated even as foreigners who normally would be able to do this sort of thing. We weren't able to, so we had to unfortunately head back. But not until Joanna used that megaphone to indicate what she thought of those soldiers at the other end, repeat the language she used, but also noting how many breaches of the Geneva Conventions they had made just in that act alone. So a lot of the residents of Fallujah ended up living here, which is a football field in Baghdad. So these are people who used to have homes and houses and ordinary family life, and end up just living in these conditions. So of course they sit with us and ask the question, I'm a farmer, I live on the outskirts of Fallujah, why did they bomb my house? And this little girl, she's about 12, had a particular moving account, and we've got some vignettes in the book. A lot of the people whose faces you see, I've actually written those stories, those personal stories in the book, including the voices of those children. So I felt very much obliged, having been a witness to that back in 2004, to document and talk about it and write about it, which is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. In the November attacks, of course, that's when the US forces returned and finished off the operation and finished off Fallujah. At the end of April, they actually had to retreat out of Fallujah, and the reason for that was because that one Al Jazeera reporter was getting the word out about how many civilian casualties there were, that it was causing great concern in the international community, and the US forces were forced to retreat. As Richard alluded to, in the second attack in November, they didn't let that happen again. So they made sure they had control of the information. So much of our book talks about information warfare and how the US forces saw the control of information as a weapon. So it was a weaponisation of information. In Fallujah, observers would say it's been done there to a greater extent than any other military campaign that we've seen, to a shocking degree actually, so we've also documented that. I returned to Fallujah in 2012 and 2013, hoping to see the city had recovered, and that's not what I found at all. So this cemetery, it's called Martyrs Cemetery. It used to be Fallujah football stadium. In 2004, there were so many civilian deaths that the local cemetery overflowed. There wasn't enough room to bury all of the bodies, so they had to dig up their football stadium. And so this is this place here. So many of the men who would have played football in this place are now buried here. The thing about Martyrs Cemetery is that everyone who's buried there, somehow their deaths are related to the military attacks on Fallujah. So they're all considered martyrs. So there, for example, these graves are new when I was there, so they would have been out of protests that were happening in Fallujah, and they were gunned down by the then Iraqi government. So it's all considered the one campaign. People in Fallujah don't separate the attacks that have come from the US forces and also from the Iraqi government in 2012 with the regime of Nouri al-Maliki. So they consider it, they don't care who's wearing the uniform, they see it all connected, all as related, and that these attacks in 2012-13 and onwards are a direct flow on and a direct result of the US attacks in 2004. The fact that other historians and commentators don't see the connection between all of those events, I find absolutely remarkable that they don't connect the way that we have. So this woman is a hero of the story. Her name is Dr. Samira Alani. She is the person who single-handedly alerted the world to the epidemic of birth deformities in Fallujah. So from as early as 2005, she noted an increase in particular cases with births. She noted an increase in miscarriage, in stillborn births, and with babies born with particular defects, including heart defects. And so she started noting this down, and she asked her colleagues to do so as well. And unfortunately, at that stage, it was just down in a notebook. But these cases became so extreme and large in number that she drew the attention of others and of journalists. Some research and study was able to happen. But at first it was just Sarah on her own trying to draw attention from anyone who would listen about this epidemic of birth deformities that she was seeing in the city of Fallujah. So when I was there in 2012 and 13, I was there for about 2 weeks at a time. Each day, so it was the front of the baby, this is the back, probably there would have been 4 or 5 cases of birth defects. So it was almost every birth. Actually, to be honest, in the 2 weeks I was there was not one healthy birth in Fallujah. This boy is probably about 3 by now. The photo doesn't show it, but his face was actually quite blue. So here's an example of a baby born with heart defects, and so he survived, but they don't know how long he would survive because he needs medications and operations that take him out to Jordan, Turkey and Syria, etc. To try to get the health care that he needs. So this is baby Safe. He was born with an enlarged head, water on the brain and born blind. The whole time I was there speaking with his family, he was screaming the whole time. He didn't let up. He was in a lot of pain. The doctors told his family early on, just take him home to die. But his family didn't do that. They fought for his life and they continued to give him medical care and continued to care for him, although his parents, as a result of the stress, separated and divorced under the stress of this. So these are just some babies that I met when I was there. So this is a story that I tell in the book. I begin by saying there's nothing as sad as the face of a new mother watching her new baby die. And that's what I saw here in this room that day, and I saw several times when Fallujah. The fact that the women, even as they're pregnant, they're always asking Dr. Samira, is my baby going to be okay? Is my baby going to live? They're terrified during the whole pregnancy, and then there's the waiting. So Dr. Samira's advice to women of childbearing age in Fallujah now is don't stop. Her advice is not to fall pregnant. She says they probably will not give birth to a healthy child. So that's a whole generation of women and men who won't be parents, and a whole generation of young babies who will never grow to live a life. So that's where I take it back to the eco side and the socio side. One of the greatest honours in Arab culture is to be a mother or a father. So much so that when you become a mother or a father, your name changes to reflect you are no longer Safe, you are Abu Ahmed, the father of, or the mother of. So it's a great status and privilege to be a parent. In Fallujah now, you've got young people in this generation who will never know that. This baby died that evening. Her name was Duoma. That's it. Just continual fear on the faces of these women in the hospital with the babies. This is a young couple. This is their 3rd baby born dead. So we're at the burial there, and the babies are buried in Martyrs Cemetery because their deaths are considered absolutely related and a result of the US attacks on Fallujah. They don't have any hesitation to say that. They believe, these parents who've lost their babies, that it's a result of the toxic weapons used. These little headstones are of the children, so there's part of the cemetery which is the baby graves, and these headstones just say baby or the name and the date, and there's a lot of those baby headstones. So what we've done in the book is we've tried to collate and research and collate as much information as we could on this topic. And so we sought out any scientific research that's been done, and there's not been enough done. We sought out all the statistics and research that Dr. Samira had done, and we've brought it all together. We were aghast at the response of the World Health Organization, an organisation that should have responded immediately and could have been great service on this issue, instead allowed itself to be politicised, and it refused to lend its support to any research. And then when there was demands that the World Health Organisation do something and do some research, they decided that they would then interview doctors around Iraq about any increase in birth deformities. There was one city that they left out, and they did not contact the doctors in this particular city, and that was Fallujah. So the conclusion from the World Health Organization was that there was no problem with birth defects in Iraq. These are just some other shots indicating 10 years later how Fallujah still lie in rubble. Very little infrastructure repaired, very little attention to the city, very little money coming in. Obviously there's no jobs, employment. Still the checkpoints are very heavy around the city. And then we come to this scene. So in 2013 we come to after Nouri al-Maliki's regime has been oppressing the people of Anbar province and Fallujah in very dramatic ways, very disturbing ways for many, many years. The people across Iraq, particularly in Anbar province, rise up in one of the greatest examples of non-violent civil disobedience that I've ever seen or heard of. So this is the road from Jordan to Baghdad, so a major highway, and the people in Anbar province, Ramadi and Fallujah, set up camp and blocked the road. They sat and licked on that road for 12 months, and every Friday people from around Anbar province and around Iraq would join them. Every Friday there was in between 250,000 and 500,000 Iraqis there every Friday, protesting peacefully, asking for their human rights, simply asking that their human rights be respected. Do you remember seeing this on the news?
No.
Okay. You can't even see the end of that crowd. So I was able to sneak in here again. There were some local Arab media, but there was basically no Western media there to report this. Therefore, basically it didn't happen, according to the media. If they weren't there, but so it wasn't entirely their fault. Nouri al-Maliki had ensured that all the roads around Ramadi were closed and foreign media were not allowed to pass through to attend these protests. This went on every Friday for a year, and the demands, I would say, were not outrageous. It was things like, stop arresting us without charge and putting us in prison without a charge or trial. Please just stop that. And then when Maliki's regime would go and knock on a door to look for a particular man, if that man wasn't home, they would arrest his wife or his sister and put her into prison. And they would be rotting in prison for months and months, and terrible things happening. Young people in Fallujah losing their jobs just because they're in Fallujah, not being able to go to university, all these examples. I'm just kind of saying the not so serious now. There's also examples of torture and murder and assassination aimed towards these people. The great thing about these protests, not just the longevity of them, the peaceful nature, but that it was unified across Iraq. So there would be clerics, for example, who would come from Basra, Najaf, and other Iraqi cities. Now that's significant if those of you who know Iraq saying those cities, because those other cities are predominantly Shia cities. So what they were expressing was that there was unity across the Shia and Sunni community, which the US sought very, very much to divide. Very much to divide. It was one of their major goals, to divide and conquer these communities. But the people in Iraq at that time, and certainly as we're seeing now on the streets of Baghdad, refused to do that, and they came together in these non-violent protests. In our book, we link the rise of Islamic State in Iraq and therefore the world to what occurred in Fallujah and Ramadi. So the rise of Islamic State has changed the world and resulted in a lot of death and destruction. So link that back, and we are saying that the attacks on Fallujah happened subsequent to those attacks, and this campaign, terror by the Maliki government on Anbar province, created the circumstance of which Islamic State were able to become a thing and able to take over the city of Fallujah and then Mosul. So we are saying that this is directly related. And again, we have a lot of many pages dedicated to this topic in particular. So Major General Jim Molan has a lot to answer for. So these protests finished when the Iraqi Maliki sent them in to dismantle the protest camp and assassinate their leaders. At that point, Islamic State, which had another, were just a band of guys circling around the western deserts of Anbar province, trying to convince these protesters to join them in a violent campaign. And the tribal elders of Fallujah did not want to go that way and wanted to continue this peaceful protest. When the protest camp was dismantled and there was chaos in this period, that was when the Islamic State came into the city of Fallujah and battled with the Fallujah tribal chiefs to take over that city, and the rest is history. So the questions that we pose in relation to the attacks on Fallujah, the sieges of Fallujah, what happened subsequently as a result of that, and the rise of Islamic State are some of the questions that we've got here. We've documented, I think, about 70 or 80 breaches of Geneva Conventions, human rights abuses. There were so many breaches of the Geneva Conventions that had the US Army attempted to abide by them, this operation would have been impossible to actually implement. So we hope one day that someone will be held accountable. We certainly have tried to collate enough evidence that hopefully this book could be a resource in the future. I don't know, I haven't lost hope in that someone's going to be sitting in a dock one day. A few people sitting in a dock one day, not about Fallujah, but for this entire disaster that has been the war in Iraq. And I hope perhaps Jim Molan will be there in the dock as well. We'll see. Thank you, everyone.